Welcome in, along with Mike Renner. I'm Steve Palazzolo. Today discussing the best players in college football, focusing on the defensive side of the ball. Mike, as we head into 2018, I think it's all about the defensive line when we're looking at the best defensive players. A lot of people already given the hype to Ed Oliver out of Houston, talking about him as a Heisman contender, and we do love Ed Oliver, but there are a few other players right up there with him contending for this top spot, the best defensive player in college football.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the single best defensive player on a snap-for-snap basis, the most impactful, it has to be Nick Bosa of Ohio State. He's as good, if not better, than his brother is at this point. The only question mark with him is, can he do it on more snaps? Because he hasn't even played 1,000 snaps in 2 seasons in his career yet. They have a heavy rotation there on the Ohio State defensive line, so he's not playing every single down, but he had the highest pass rushing grade of any player returning in the country last year, highest overall grade of any player returning in the country last year at 93.9. He's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, Ohio State fans remind us he's not even a starter, but the starter designation doesn't matter. When he's on the field, he has been the most dominant player as a true freshman and as a true sophomore. So heading into his junior year, not only looking like a top 5 NFL pick, but probably the best defensive player in all of college football. We do have Ed Oliver right there, though, from Houston. Again, projecting him to the NFL, that's a whole different story. Can he rush the passer enough? But as far as his run defense in college football, it has been spectacular. He moves like a linebacker. Sometimes looks like he moves like a safety, despite being in that 280-pound range. Really love Ed Oliver's game. I think he is, from a college standpoint, worth every bit of the hype.
Yeah, he's still such a weird projection, though, because he's right now probably 275, 280-pound nose tackle there for Houston in a weird, 3-4 front that they run that asks him to do a lot of different stuff to where he's not really rushing the passer every play. They run a lot of stunts. They're like flying him out wide. It's just not necessarily a system that necessarily suits him and projects well to the next level, but you can't deny the fact that he has the highest returning run defense grade of any player in the country, 94.9 overall. He is very good in that regard.
I love watching him play against Navy in that triple option attack where a lot of defenders are just lost, and he is just a disruptor, defeats blocks, gets into the backfield. The next name we have to mention, smaller school, Northern Illinois, but from an on-field production standpoint, what Sutton Smith did last year was absolutely spectacular. He's a defensive lineman in name, despite being listed at 227 pounds on their roster last year. Supposedly he's up to 240 this year, but an undersized college defensive lineman who just dominated in 2017.
The thing is, in college, you don't need to be big on the edge to dominate. A lot of college offensive tackles, even at the highest level, even in the SEC, still cannot move laterally well enough to block a guy at that size who's as quick as Sutton Smith is. So while you might say, oh, the competition level, when he even played against better competition, he still dominated. He had 92 pressures last season, 26 more than any other returning player in the country. It's hard to ignore that sort of production.
He had dominant games against Nebraska, Boston College. I mean, he's faced good competition and showed up this year. Iowa's on the schedule, Florida State. He has a few opportunities to make a name for himself early in the season. We love Sutton Smith from Northern Illinois. A couple other names, if we move to the secondary, Lavert Hill out of Michigan last year. The numbers are just ridiculous. When he was targeted, quietly became one of the best corners in the country last season.
Yeah, targeted 31 times, only allowed 13 catches all season long. Michigan, they play a lot of man coverage. He is fantastic in that regard. Didn't allow a single touchdown. I'm looking forward to what he does this season.
Only gave up a handful of first downs as well. That Michigan defense is absolutely loaded. And then another corner, DeAndre Baker out of Georgia. From an NFL draft perspective, maybe the best corner in the entire country looking forward. But as far as just looking to this season in college football, Baker is right up there, and he was spectacular in the playoffs when Georgia almost pulled it off for the national title.
His numbers in the playoffs, like you mentioned, were ridiculous. Targeted 10 times, only allowed 3 catches for 77 yards, had a pick, 2 pass breakups, 0 touchdowns in that playoff. He basically won that Oklahoma game down the stretch.
One more name to add. Any love for TJ Edwards, linebacker out of Wisconsin? He showed up in our grading a few years ago, and every time he's on the field, just seems to make a ton of plays.
The Wisconsin system really relies on those linebackers to make plays. Their front 3 defensive linemen are basically placeholders against the run, just holding the guards, and they let the linebacker, TJ Edwards, run free. He was as productive as any linebacker in the country last year.
All right, let us know who you think is the best defensive player heading into the 2018 college football season. Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to give us the thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got a ton of college football content coming your way this season.